I'm going to go over my time frame for when the bottom could be in, when altcoin season will start, and how that correlates to Bitcoin's bottom being in, and also where we could be in the cycle and a different angle no one is talking about, and I haven't heard anybody point out these details that I'm going to give you. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of information out there, and it's hard to tell what exactly to think. It's hard to decipher what is the important information and what is just the noise. So here on this channel, I focus on giving you the signal, not the noise. So then you can make an informed decision for yourself and make a clear decision. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. This is the Bitcoin chart on the monthly. What I want to show you is the MACD. We can see this monthly candle is going to close in 1 day. The light color red for the MACD, and I have it marked out each cycle where that happened before. Last bear market, November 1st, 2022, that is when we had the second light bar for the MACD, and it was close to the bottom. It wasn't at the bottom, but it was just before the bottom. The cycle before that, we can see the light colored second one on the monthly and how it lines up. And that's back March 2029. Going back even further to the bear market before that, we have to zoom in and we can see the second bar that's light right here, close to the bottom. This is just one indicator that we could look at to get information to determine what Bitcoin is going to do. Like I said, just because it's happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to repeat in the future. What I want to do is take a look at the 12-day. So here we are. It's about ready to cross right here. These are the same white lines for the monthly. It's almost lining up perfectly where it's at. And back here, that's where it crossed. This is very interesting. What this is showing me, the bottom could possibly be in. I didn't want to make this video because I think it's ridiculous that the bottom might be in. Everybody thinks it's going to go down lower. I think it's going to go down lower. But looking at this, it makes sense. It's a possibility that Bitcoin has bottomed out already. Here we're on the daily chart for Bitcoin. I'm using this indicator called Bitcoin 350 DMA. I want to show you something here. Now look at this. This is very, very close detail. Most people don't look at it this close. And I want to take a look at these moving averages. No one talks about these moving averages, and I just feel like they're really important. And so this is the current cycle, and it has not came down to this bottom moving average yet. And so that's why a lot of people do think it's going to go down lower. Right now, I want to focus on these two moving averages and how they did not cross in this cycle so far. This is the start of it, and they never crossed. Now keep that in mind as we look at the past cycles. And you can see that this bear market went down to the bottom moving average, and you can see that in this cycle crossed above. These two lines crossed, and then they crossed right here as well before the mega crash. Now for this mini cycle where it touched these bottom moving averages, the price went up pretty high up and then it went back down to these moving averages. However, though, these two lines did not cross like it did up here. So if you look at this one as a little mini bull cycle, I think you can actually compare that to the cycle we just had. Because if you look at it from a distance, you see that these lines didn't cross right here. It's the same thing with COVID-19 cycle crash right here, where the lines didn't cross. But however, though, there was a nice pump and then a reset where it went down to these moving averages before the big pump up. And so I saw this and I wanted to share it with you because no one is talking about this. It might not be important. However, this might explain possibly if we have a shorter bear market, because this was a mini bull market, bear market with COVID-19 crash. And maybe this bear market that we're going through is not going to be as long as what everybody thinks it is, because these lines right here didn't cross. When you take a look at it, these lines didn't cross right here, just like with COVID-19, and everybody is waiting for it to come all the way down here. What if people miss this next little pump up? What if people miss the altcoin season because they're waiting for prices to go this low? Now, with COVID-19, it did go down pretty low, but it was very, very, very briefly. And then the altcoin season happened afterwards, which would make sense why we haven't had a really traditional altcoin season. And it would go with the business cycle as well. So I've been thinking about this, and obviously I don't want to be caught off sides and buy too early and have it go down to, the bottom moving averages right here and lose 50% of my investment. However, though, I can't help but thinking, what if I miss this cycle or get into it after prices pump up, waiting for prices to go down lower? And everybody is waiting for prices to go down lower because it's obvious. All the different analysis, like analysts that I listen to on YouTube, are saying that it could go down a lot lower. But no one is talking about how these didn't cross because there was no blow off top. And that this could look similar to COVID-19 in that way, where it didn't cross right here, ended up crossing when we went into the altcoin season, which we haven't had yet. Tell me in the comments below what you think about that. I know it could be crazy, and I didn't want to make this video because it sounds so crazy. However, though, I don't know. I had these thoughts, and I wanted to share it with you and see what you think. You use a little bit of social media to see what other people think about this. Yeah, but you can see with this cycle, the price did go down to these moving averages. And then again, this cycle, the price did go down to these moving averages. So there's a couple ways to look at these moving averages. Are we going to go down lower like we did in the past? Or is it just another COVID-19 cycle that we're in right now, but just elongated over like 4 years instead of just a year? Tell me in the comments below. Now I want to take a close look at this red and white moving average. They have not crossed yet. However, though, in the past when they have crossed, it has been the middle of the bear market at the very bottom. Sometimes the bottom has been in, sometimes it goes a little bit lower. So let's look at the past and see what it was like when these moving averages crossed, which they have not crossed yet. And if we plot it out, we're looking at in August, these crossing. August 6th. So keep that in mind when we go back to these previous cycles. So when these crossed right here, the bottom was not in, but we had our first bottom and then a little lower bottom shortly after that. And then the cycle before that, when these lines crossed, the bottom was in already. Now looking at the cycle before that, the bottom was in on this chart before those lines crossed. This is one of the things that I'm going to use to help confirm the bottom could possibly be in. Here is the Bitcoin dominance chart. It looks like it's going to cross June 9th, 2026. And you can see the last time these red and white lines crossed was the start of the altcoin season. It was the start of the decline of the Bitcoin dominance. Now, just because it happened in the past does not mean the altcoin season is going to happen again in the future when Bitcoin dominance falls. Who knows, maybe people just sell their Bitcoin and go right into stable coins, which would cause Bitcoin dominance to drop as well. Now, the question I have is, if we have more stable coins on Ethereum or different layer ones like XRP, Ethereum, Solana, would that be good for those chains when all those extra stablecoins go on there and the dominance goes more towards stablecoins? Also, Bitcoin dominance does correlate a lot with higher market cap altcoins like Ethereum, XRP, BNB, Solana. So as those grab more market share, it's going to affect the Bitcoin dominance even more. So this may be indicating that one of those altcoins are going to take off once June 9th comes along. And a little bird told me that Ethereum is going to have an upgrade Glamsterdam, which could send the transactions per second up to theoretically 10,000 transactions per second, because of multiple lanes and also raising gas limits. I'm not an expert in that. That's just from watching other YouTubers talking about it. I don't know all the details with it, but that's the rumor, is that it could increase the transactions per second all the way up to 10,000 per second. Looking at another data point with this altcoin, where these two lines cross the red and white, right here where the white ended up on top of the red was right there, and that was the start of this huge altcoin season. So I just get really interested when all this data starts to line up, where Bitcoin could be bottoming out or has already bottomed out, where the chart, looks a little bit like COVID-19, where those lines are going to cross in August, which would confirm that the bear market bottom was in, or it's going to happen shortly after that, very close, not too much lower in price, and where the altcoin season could possibly start in June. Now, at first it didn't make sense, because June having an altcoin season start in the bear market doesn't make sense. However, though, if Bitcoin's bottom is already in, then it would make sense that the altcoin could start at the bottom of the market. So, but on the other hand, there's that 4-year cycle where people are looking at Bitcoin to bottom out in October. So I'm going to tell you what I think. And I don't have a crystal ball. This is my own opinion. I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't financial advice. So the question is the price going to go down to these moving averages or not? That is the question. And honestly, I don't know. I'm torn between thinking it could be possibly like COVID-19, where it goes down to the middle part very quickly. And if that is, I think the bottom is in already, because we've been down here long enough. And if it's like COVID-19, I think that we're going to go back up. And one thing that can confirm that is if the price gets above this red line like it did in COVID-19 and stays up there for a while. And I think it's a possibility that it does go down to this bottom, because every cycle it has, even in COVID-19, you can see the price did go down here briefly. And so I am waiting for June. I think June that could possibly happen like that. I go back and forth with that, So we'll have to see. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm not sure. What I am pretty confident about, though, is this. I think once these lines do cross, I think that's a good time to buy, in my opinion, because the bottom could be in already, or it could go a little bit lower, but it's not going to go a lot lower. And at this time, when these do cross, Bitcoin dominance is going to be dropping. And so there could be an altcoin season already starting. I might not catch the ultimate bottom, but at least this is confirming for me that the bottom is possibly in already. That's good confirmation for me.